rescheduled for November, so that I will move Jim Hazer up to where the Northam Martin presentation was going to be. First, I have to see if we have a quorum here tonight. How many of us are as members?
6.
6. Do we need one more?
Yeah, we needed one of the alternates. Whoever was here first.
Doug?
Wait,
Patrick.
am I
Let's
wrong?
do Patrick.
Am I wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 7. Never mind.
Never mind? Sorry, Doug. Sorry, Doug. Okay, so we have a quorum. So,
I counted the list. I just didn't have my name.
oh, okay. Oh, okay. So, excuse me.
What some people might want.
So I'd like to start the meeting. We have a quorum, so the first item under your agenda is a copy of the September minutes. I'm looking for any edits or any changes or additions that you recommend. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. This was sent out yesterday. Matt will make notations and produce the final draft once we discuss and approve, if that's our desire.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So one abstention.
Gotcha.
2 abstentions.
2?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you weren't here, okay.
That's right.
2
So it passed 5-0.
abstention, okay. 2 5 approve. Okay, thank you. One item. Okay. Second, bills and reimbursements. Just my things here. I always ask the commission to approve any expenditures that come to me. So first, I'd like to take care of just the general reimbursements. We'll have another budget item to discuss under budget. So on my list here, the invoices I've received, there's a receipt from Hobby Lobby in Seabrook for mounting the large conservation map on foam core to use on the October 3 event last week. That was $14. I've got 3 here. Do we want to do them all at one approval? Okay. Yes. The second invoice is from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions. 3 conference registrations for the November 2 annual meeting. That's $180. We got the early application price, and we're members. And the third invoice arrived this morning from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions for the annual dues, and that's $300. So the total, oh gosh, I didn't total it here. So is that $494 if I add up 14, 180, and 300
And what year is the membership
for the coming year? We paid this time last year, so they always send the renewals for the last quarter of the year. So this finishes this year and it's for the next year.
for?
Okay. Yes, we had to double pay last year because we hadn't paid the year before, so there's only one. So it's due, but she sends it the last quarter, so I have those 3 invoices.
What'd you say the total was?
I think 494.
That's what I get.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve these expenditures?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Approved. There we go. Okay. So, Jim, I'm moving you up to now. If you'd like to do the presentation, Jim is chair of the cemetery trustees, trustees of the cemetery trustees. Cemetery trustees. Okay.
She's passing those out. Like you said, I'm Jim Azure. I'm the chair of the cemetery trustees. I'm here tonight with Skip Belanger, who's also one of our trustees, and Joyce Kegel, our superintendent of cemeteries.
Sit here. Oh, sure.
Thanks, Matt. I'll get real cozy with Matt. So anyways, I'm doing the presentation, but honestly, I'm doing this on behalf of all of the trustees and Joyce. We've worked together on this for probably the past 6 months. So why am I here? Well, first of all, you're the first one. Thank you, Becky, for getting me on the agenda. We're going to present this to you, Conservation, then I'm doing it next to the Planning Board, and then finally I'll be doing it later this month to the Select Board. So I was told those are the 3 groups that we really should kind of get involved with this as try to figure out like how we actually are going to get this done. So what I'm gonna be doing tonight is, first of all, reviewing the current cemetery situation that we have at Tonry. So the only cemetery that we have available for burials is Section 5, which is in, I guess that's the south corner, the backside of Tonry. It's the only available cemetery space remaining in Brentwood. So of the roughly 530 standard 4x10 lots, and that's a standard burial lot, is 4 feet by 10 feet. We have about 100 of those remaining for sale, available. All the rest are sold. For the past 24 years, the town has sold an average of 9 lots per year. So you just do simple math. And again, I'll have some geometry and some basic math, but nothing above Algebra 1 and geometry, I promise. But so you get, basically, we'd have 10 years left, roughly. Now, again, I can't say that next year Joyce won't have like a gangbuster and sell 50 lots or something, but if you just go by the averages, we have roughly 10 years left. Per the RSA 289-2, it states every municipality shall provide or may enter into an agreement with an adjacent municipality or nonprofit entity to provide one or more suitable cemeteries for the interment of deceased persons, which shall be subject to such regulations as the municipality may establish. Basically, in New Hampshire, we have to have cemeteries, right? Or we have to go into an agreement with somebody that has a cemetery. We, the trustees, recommend that Brentwood continue to provide a cemetery for our residents. And please, if any questions at any point, just stop me.
How much are the lots?
How much it cost?
Yeah.
Joyce, we just raised it, is it 4? No. All right, so given that we have 10 years, which really isn't that much time when you figure what we're gonna have to do to get this done, that's why we're coming to you now. So we're trying to, now let's try to figure out what do we need for land for a future cemetery. So I wanted to normalize this down to a 1 acre lot so we could, build up from there. So you basically, an acre is 200 feet by 200 feet or 40,000 square feet. You have on here a perimeter roadway that's 13 feet wide, and then we put a roadway down the middle, which is 12 feet wide. And again, I went around to cemeteries in Raymond and Danville and Exeter, Fremont. So I kind of measured to try to get an idea, just not based on what we had, but based on what others had in cemeteries. And these are roughly average width access roadways or paved roadways that or dirt roadways that they have on the cemeteries. So basically what this does, by putting that roadway, you only get 2 sections of usable land to do burials, each one of them 81 feet by 174 feet or 28,188 square feet. Roughly 70% of 1 acre is usable. You lose 30% for the roadway. Now, if you look at, and we talk about standard plots, a plot is 4 lots together. So if you look on these diagrams, you'll see 8 plots on each one. One is a standard, that means you put a casket that size, it's a 10 by 4. The other one is a cremation only, so that's 16 by 4. So instead of having a 4 by 10, you have a 4 by 4. And then there's 8 plots, 4 lots per plot, or 32 lots. So for standard, you have 1,976 square feet, And for 32 lots, and for cremation only, you'd have 1,064 square feet for 32 lots. So you do the math, you basically come up with, you could, on an acre, you could have 124 standard plots, which is it's just 497 lots, or 231 cremation plots, which is 923 cremation lots. Right now, New Hampshire has one of the highest cremation rates in the country. In fact, Joyce and I were just at the New Hampshire Cemetery Association meeting to get in Manchester, and they did verify that we are still one of the highest in the country at 80%. The rate for the U.S. is somewhere between 50 and 60%. So what we did is we used a 60-40, where you'd say, okay, 60% of the cemetery would be for cremation only, 40% would be for standard burials. And you could actually convert going forward. It's just that you can get more cremation lots in the same area. Yep.
Sorry, that was a lot of numbers. So
Yep.
is this showing 1 acre could get
Yes.
500 lots, which at 10 a year is 50 years worth on 1 acre?
Correct. You got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to-
Now again, that's exactly right. Yes. In fact, that's what the next screen is going to do. You
Okay,
just-
sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I thought
Go ahead, Bob.
the numbers seemed high, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
hadn't
yeah.
jumped with all the
Yeah.
lots and plots. And
Yep.
Jim, when I listen to presentations, generally I like to listen with a purpose. So what are you asking of us?
Actually, I want to, when I get to the end, I believe conservation provide at one point suggested 3 different locations for a possible cemetery.
So you want us to help you find a location?
Correct.
Okay.
And Bob, I'll be honest with you, I really haven't found someone who knows how you do a new cemetery.
Mm.
I certainly don't know how to do it, and I'm not sure, like I said, I don't think any of us on the current board has that experience of, okay, you know, what's it gonna take? And who in town, like, I don't have a budget to buy, to do anything. Like, if we get the land for free, I don't have a budget to cut a tree down. So, it's something that, and I'm not sure that's something you would do. That's why I'm going to
Yep.
kind of getting it out there.
Are you asking us to help you figure that out too?
No, I think at some point you might have some part of this. That's what I'm
Yeah, so
expecting.
you'd like us to keep our eyes open for
Yes,
land?
correct.
Okay.
That's absolutely one of the important things. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
So again, now all I did was say, okay, well, we're gonna use the 60-40, 60% cremation, 40% standard. So if you do that, 1 acre will contain 748 lots available for burial, right? So as you kind of started to do, 1 lot, if you sell 9 a year, would last about 83 years. Because again, cremation, you get more than standard burials. That's why you came up with 50 roughly, but it's actually 83 because you can get more cremations in there. We recommend, if we're gonna do this and do it right, let's at least, I said, gotta last at least 100 years, right? So we said, let's try, if we get 2 acres of land, that would be 160. So we kind of said, if we get 2 acres of land, that's gonna last the town 150 years. So I think if we're gonna do this, we should plan for that long haul and not just do something small where, heck, 50 years down the road, the next person's gonna have to deal with this all over again. So that's why we said, we recommend that the town looks for a lot that has they're starting with 2 acres of land. And all this is kind of just, we wanted to validate that our calculations were correct. So we took the current Tonry Section 5, which is 7/10 of an acre. Per our layout map, which is back on page 1, I believe, or 2, there are 524 total lots in Section 5. If you use our calculations, you come up with 494. It's off by roughly 30. It's pretty close. And if you actually look, I believe the reason why it's off is because, like, if you look here at the bottom, the walkway doesn't go down through the middle. So you actually have some lots down there that in my calculation wouldn't be, because I have the roadway going all the way up, down. So, but what this did is just validated that our calculations were correct. In other words, we took our our metrics and applied it toward the real cemetery, and we came up with just about the same numbers. We're really close. So I'm really confident that the 150 years with 2 acres is accurate. So to sum it up, again, I believe these were at one time given to Joyce by conservation. I'm not sure, Becky, I'm not sure.
No.
We got them from someone too, it was a while ago that someone gave us these 3 parcels that the town owns. This one is on Lightford Lane. It's 5.3 acres. From a trustee, we talked about it. Yeah, this would work. It's kind of an odd shape. It's also kind of in a residential area. You see there's houses all around it, but it has possibility. The next one is, this one is actually off of, it says, is off of Russo Lane. And I'm not sure why the location is called Old Danville Road, but this, if you looked on the map of the town, this is like the farthest southwest corner you can get. In fact, the bottom boundary of this is Kingston. Like, it, first of all, like, it just doesn't make sense because it's not centrally located to the town or cemetery, and you got to drive through between 2 houses kind of to get to it. You have to be a right of way. Probably.
No access from the other 3 sides.
No, it's all woods, and like I said, it's Kingston. So this one really does, I don't think makes sense for us to do as a cemetery. It's just not.
Again, it's residential, and I think the residents on Russo Lane use that for their recreation. I think there's
Yeah.
a lot going on
And
there.
it's not centrally located.
Yeah.
The last one is, this was one that's off of Scrabble Road. I think the trustees, when we look at, and the superintendent, we were like, wow, this one out of the 3, we kind of thought this one made kind of the most sense. This is, again, it's 5 acres total. This is Scrabble Road. In the upper left corner there, that's actually the back of the storage unit place on 125, right, Paul, right near your office. So this is right around the corner from that. So it's kind of centrally located. It's close to 125. What's that?
I won't have far to go.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah. And you know, it's there are some houses on the side, but we're close to 125. So kind of like, again, as Bob, I'm not quite sure where like conservation fits into this whole process. I just wanted to make sure you all were aware. You also have eyes out on other properties. Like I see something like this, if the town said that let's do it there on 5 acres, we would start off by just doing 2 and then have the rest for the next generation of cemetery trustees to deal with, right?
So let's jump ahead a little bit. If the consensus of whoever you're presenting this to is, yeah, that's a reasonable choice.
Yep.
Then what has to happen?
Yeah.
The town owns it, so I presume the select board could
Would have to make the
designate it.
decision, yeah.
If they could make the decision, it would have to be rezoned, probably, which is planning board, right?
Mhm.
So it sounds like this is a pretty simple solution if the consensus of the various committees were
Yeah.
that we should go this way.
It might be a best use of that property because when you try to exit Scrabble Road onto 125, that's always a traffic hazard. So this would be something that wouldn't have a lot of daily traffic in and out onto
And once you
125.
go in,
and
you
that-
don't come out.
Yep.
That's true.
But if you put something else in there, a business or something, you have a lot of
Yep.
issues with 125, I think.
Do cemeteries require a particular zoning?
I don't know.
No.
If it required a particular zoning, the cemetery does not. Okay.
Okay, so it wouldn't even have to be rezoned.
Actually, we bought our house from the Brentwood Cemetery Corporation because it was part of the parcel of land that our house is on.
So you're the reason we don't have enough land?
Yes.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask for the simplest. I mean, have you looked at adjacent parcels to existing cemeteries? Because it looks like on a wooded lot, you're gonna have a lot of expense to put it in. So I'm wondering if there isn't something adjacent like Becky that would be willing to sell 2 acres.
Well,
Or
the,
like,
I
why-
know this,
why is-
the current cemetery that we have,
Surrounded.
yeah, in fact, I believe when that was donated, they gave us more, it was smaller, it was a private cemetery, and she gave us the full 5 acres or something
Yeah.
at that time.
But in light of that, given how small all the towns are, it sounds like you've already ruled out approaching neighboring towns. Like why,
Well-
and why?
Well, we
in
just feel like
central,
that
I mean, we're like
because,
a mile wide town or something.
What's
Why-
that?
Why is it like when you ruled out the other piece that was not central? Like why?
not central.
Yeah, you said one of the pieces wasn't central, so you ruled it out right away.
Oh,
And
no,
I'm
the
just
only one that we
wondering
ruled out right
why-
away was the one that's down near Kingston,
the one-
mostly because there's no access to it, and you're like, yeah,
Your funeral
it,
processions go right
like-
through that neighborhood.
Di-
That's
Sorry, I didn't realize that part. I just heard it. say
Yeah,
it wasn't
no, no,
central.
no, no,
I'm just
and
curious.
yeah,
Like,
it's-
I was in New Jersey
yeah,
and
yeah,
other places. I know we were always going out to Long
Right.
Island, and
Right.
not everyone is even getting close
Right.
to their
Right.
kind of why.
right. No, and
Hampshire
honestly,
thing, or like why-
honestly, it's because I saved the right answer for the last one. It's when we saw that one, we're just like, that's right in the middle of town. It's right near 125. This one's so far out. If we're gonna take, and again, this one's 6 acres, but and the town owns it. So if we're gonna take one of the town properties,
Yeah.
why not take that one? And this one might actually be better for a conservation-y type thing anyways than.
What are the expenses associated with just
Yeah.
having an agreement with another town cemetery that has ample space?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we even looked at that because I think that the trustees, we feel that Brentwood, the community wants to have its own cemetery. That I don't think we would want to have to go to Exeter or to Fremont to be buried. I gotta be honest, I mean, I think people who are buying the lots here want to be buried in Brentwood. I think that's why.
In Tonry, we bought 2 plots a couple of years ago. We are surrounded by our neighbors. It's almost like a neighborhood of
You like your
graves.
neighbors?
We like our neighbors, yeah. But I think people gravitated to that
No, the
area.
only reason I
Yeah.
ask is because, you know, we're always grappling with expense, and a new
Sure.
cemetery is gonna potentially be expensive.
I'll be honest,
What are
like,
other alternatives?
if it wasn't state law, I would be saying, I don't know why Brentwood wants to be in the cemetery business either. But I mean,
Right.
it's kind of state law, and I do feel that people are buying these lots because they want to be buried in Brentwood, not because they want to be buried in Exeter or something. You know, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. In fact, I think eventually, I would think this is going to have to get voted on because I don't know where the money would come from to do any of this. So that might be something that someone might bring up, is, you know, if the people say we don't want to spend money, maybe it's cheaper to do an agreement. And I'm not sure whether it is or isn't. I don't know. I just know as the trustees, we feel like that it's, in our opinion, the right thing to do is to have it in town. We have our own cemetery.
Joyce, can you get on the mic? Can you get on the mic?
There's an open mic right here. And there.
So it's a logistic nightmare to get into an association with a private cemetery. I know, I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years. I know this gig, if you will. It's also a logistic nightmare to get into an association with another town because they're going to charge a lot. We don't charge a lot. And as Becky said, people actually from other towns come to Brentwood asking if they can be buried here. So I think for us to have it here within our own town, you may and may not be making money, I don't know, but we are obligated to have our cemetery, and I think people really appreciate having our own cemetery in town. And to try and take it out of our town is gonna be hard. And also, other towns are facing the same thing. Newmarket can't put any more cemeteries in, not Newmarket, Newcastle, they can't because of ledge. They have to go to columbariums. So while we're doing this, we are looking at alternatives, but we're thinking not 10, 15, 20 years ahead. We're thinking 50, 100 years ahead. And we went to the meeting yesterday and everybody's like, wow, that's awesome that you guys are thinking further ahead, not just our generation, but our kids and our grandkids. And to have land set aside, I mean, it's already set aside. We don't have to build it right now. We can build up some cash. We can maybe ask for donations. We're just asking for the land in order to do that.
Yeah, I think personally, just as a taxpayer, maybe this is going
Right.
off topic of the
Get closer to the microphone.
Conservation Commission. I think knowing the monetary impact is what taxpayers are gonna wanna know, right? So you're saying we don't even know if we make money, if we put all the infrastructure, what is a lot gonna cost? I think it would be helpful to know what the alternatives are so people can make an educated decision if you're gonna come to the taxpayers.
I don't think that we can project that. I think right now, all we're asking for is the land. Or we're asking if we have town land, can it be earmarked specifically for a cemetery versus putting a new business in or putting in another housing development? Because the best part about it is if you're only using 2 acres of those 5 acres, that leaves 3 acres open. I don't know how many people have walked the Glen behind the Pilgrim Church. It's a really nice little cemetery. You walk on dirt paths, there's burials there. And I've said it before, we could do a hybrid. We could have like a conservation walk around area that if people want to have just a small lot with urns, we could utilize the woods, and that pushes out even further for years. I mean, we can have more things. It doesn't have to be just gardens of stone. Having the 5 acres would allow us longevity.
Yeah, and I also think it'll get to that, right? Because once we do have the lot, then there's gonna be, and like I said, we actually met some people, this is what they do for a living. They come out and survey and they tell you, is this a good area for a cemetery? What do you have to do to make it a cemetery? And like Joyce said, I think there are people in town who cut down trees and take lumber, and, you know, there's people who have construction equipment. Maybe some of this can be done by people in town. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the cost is. How big is that one?
5
I
acres.
don't know what the cost of 5 acres would be, but as you say, there'd be. Oh, is that-
No comment. No comment.
I haven't put it into it.
I'll move to
Uh,
strike.
But I think Joyce's point is a good one, that, you know, there are a lot of people in town who cut trees and, would, use firewood and all of that, so. It seems to me that the logical thing to do would be to take this select board and pitch this particular lot, see what they think.
I think this is a multi-year process anyway. First
Yeah.
is to find the possible space or location, and then work through the logistics of what are the next steps.
Right, earmark the space,
Yeah.
earmark the land, because we've got 10 years, right?
Yep.
Before we run out
Maybe,
currently.
yeah.
Right, more or less.
Yeah.
We certainly have 7 or 8.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's just a matter of, if you earmark this plot, and, you know, then you can go from there and decide what to do when.
I'm done anyways.
Are any of those surrounded by town land at all? Like we can form a hybrid?
I don't think so.
But maybe that's something you could look at from, like, are there any other places in
Yeah.
town? And let us know. I mean, to me, that's step number 1, is for all of us to figure out where do we want this new cemetery.
So are
And
you
then-
asking for any action?
Just if there's anything similar or better than that Scrabble Road location, or yeah. Or is there something that you see or know about this location that would make it not be a good location for a cemetery? Like, did you have other plans for that? Has conservation already looked at that?
No abutting conservation land, and looking at the wetlands code map that I've got here, it does not have a prime wetlands around it, so
No.
no prime wetlands.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so. I thought I'd looked that up too, yeah.
Mhm.
So that would be the only other thing.
So those remove some.
Cool.
Is the criteria then, the 5 acres?
No, like I said, 2, we recommend 2.
Okay,
This one happens to have 5, which is, like I said, we would start with 2, and then you just leave the rest for future.
Yep.
yeah.
Any other questions or feedback?
Can I suggest that if whatever lots we're seriously considering, that we talk to the town engineer about access, site distances and things like that are really important, and it would be ill-advised to count on a piece of property that doesn't have what it needs to become a cemetery.
Okay, yeah,
Good idea.
absolutely.
Okay, town engineer site distances, access. Okay, anything else, Bob?
There's a piece I've mentioned before of open land on Route 111A that's 2.3 acres near Linden Drive.
Oh,
It's a
that's,
little cul-de-sac.
is that, what's his name? The guy who? BA. Is that BA?
Yeah, so, and that comes from whatever agreement was made when the town took the land, is that right?
Yeah.
And and this has all been looked at from that perspective
Is that
then?
the hayfield?
And but what I'm asking is this, these three lots in
Yeah.
particular, this one, have they all been looked at in the same way for encumbrances that might preclude this?
Yeah, I guess that's another thing you could help us with, because that spot you were talking about, we actually talked about this a long time ago, and we were told, no, that had something about it has to be open and it has to be hayed or something, cut grass.
Yeah, it does.
Plus, yeah,
So no,
I don't think.
so you
that-
were told this by somebody?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Well,
Okay,
Bob, that's
so-
the type of thing, if there's other places you know of, you think, I mean, I'd be willing to,
Yeah.
let me know, let us know, please.
So the notes I have is, anyone from conservation can check other locations and other recommendations they
Sure.
might be of a lot that's at least 2 acres, probably a little bit more. Bob is saying, talk to the town engineer about site distances. Are there any encumbrances on any of these 3 parcels? Is there any other note that conservation might need to follow up on or get back to you with?
No, I think that's good. Joyce, you good with that? Skip? Good? Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
What we're trying to do is to find some land around town, we don't have to buy.
yeah.
There's some land on South Road also. Several other parcels. Let's get the ball.
So these parcels aren't in conservation, they're just town-owned land, correct?
I believe it's just town-owned land.
Okay. Well, we'll do our work and get back to you. You're going around to all the other departments or all the other?
Yeah, this month.
committees?
I think planning is next week and select board's the week after, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so within the next month to get back to you with
Yeah, that'd be
any
great.
feedback?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And you're being my first one, so thanks for being good to me.
So you're practice, we're practicing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Jim. Okay, so, thank you, that was, Jim was moved up to earlier in the agenda, so I'm going to move on unless there are any other questions. Okay. Couple of the next things on the agenda are just reports and updates on what we've discussed in the past. Do I have everyone's attention? Okay, I'm going to follow up with just reports on what we've done what has happened in the past. So let me start with Prescott. We had a presentation by Gove Engineering and Bruce Scammon about the Prescott development, commercial development on 27. We endorsed what they wanted to do. Currently, Brendan Quigley, one of the presenters, is going back to DES asking for a reading on the date that the new regulations came into effect after they did their application. So we're still waiting on, it doesn't affect what we're doing, but he's still pursuing that, just to let you know, that I'm still getting emails from Brendan and Bruce Scammon. MTI, PolyX on Pine Road, there was a site walk, and TEC, which is our engineering firm, reviewed the plan, and they had a list of questions for Mark and Glenn, and then the planning board went through every single one of those questions that TEC had and discussed and approved and had okayed all of those things. So planning board granted a conditional use with no issues unresolved. The only questions that the only 2 pieces they're still waiting for is the official sign off by the fire department for the truck turning lane and the sprinkler system, which they say works, but they're just waiting for the letter from the fire department. So that one's moving forward. So that was MTI Planning Board response. Next, next on, and just to let you know that the other one that came before us was the brewing company on, was it Bayside? Bayside on 125. They're going before, there's a public hearing scheduled for October 17 about their presentation. The public is welcome to attend. It's all posted on the town website, so if you have questions, it'll be something you can look up on the town website for details. There were a couple of last minute things that came for me, so. Bayside is building its distribution. They're going to they're doing a public hearing about their presentation, about their project, which is an open shed on paved land, on paved ground. Yep. Yes, we do. It says it is October 17 at 7 o'clock. Okay. Prescott we did. This is MTI. Okay, consultant. Okay, Open Space Committee. Just to follow up on the plans we've been working on for a couple of months with the Open Space Committee. We scheduled an event for October 3 to encourage landowners who might consider placing land in conservation to come and listen to a presentation about the pros and cons and what the steps would be to place land in conservation. The town residents approved a $3 million conservation bond in 2022 at town meeting, and we've just started to use that. The first parcel is going through that process and should be completed by the end of this calendar year. Reviewing conservation maps and parcels in land, we determined that there were about 28 parcels that had scenic value, wildlife habitat, water frontage along the river, size of the parcel that might be possible to consider for easement. So we sent out 28 letters, inviting them, giving them some basic information and inviting them to attend the October 3 event, which was held at the library. It was called Conservation Conversations. There were contacts with about 10 of those individuals prior to that meeting to encourage them to come. We had some show up, even a couple of people who did not receive a letter had questions and showed up. It was sort of a modest return, but we were satisfied with that. Dwayne Hyde from CELT presented the overview of what it takes to place land in conservation and answered questions. Then 3 landowners whose land is in conservation spoke about their experience. It was Kate Parks, who has land on Middle Road, Jody Kaufman, who has land, I think it's on South Road, Old Gordon Road, and Emma Batchelder, who purchased, she and her husband purchased what was the Schmalzer property on Middle Road with the 3 parcels on both sides of the road. They spoke about their experience, what that was like, the benefits, a little bit about monitoring, any concerns or questions. They all seemed to be satisfied with that. It wasn't an onerous process to hold on to conservation. It was time consuming to go through the process. It takes sometimes up to 1.5 to 2 years to do that. So it is a long process once you're getting into that. We're going to do follow-up notes to the people who were there with some more information, and those who were not there will probably distribute a packet of information that was available on the table. So we're going to do some follow-up with that. We have a lot of handouts that go into particular detail about what it takes and the costs and how that's funded. So it's good information to get out there. There are other towns that are doing that. There's so much development pressure in this part of New Hampshire that people want to save open space. And when you look at our master plan, when the survey was done last year, the highest priority by far, the #1 theme was to retain the rural character of Brentwood, protect wildlife habitat, and open space. So what we're trying to do with the bond falls right into what the master plan identified in their survey. And this is our second bond. We've gone through this before, so it's time to do it again, given the pressure in town. So that's one aspect that we've been doing to trying to move forward with our bond. The second part, and this is where I think I will appreciate it most, is we've had a conversation, and you all know this, with a consultant who could work with us on various parcels or projects that go along with placing land in conservation. The contract process was started. She provided her basic contract. It's gone back and forth between Primex, and right now it just came back from Town Council on the 24th of September. The consultant was on vacation. I heard from her at 3 o'clock this afternoon that she just is back in, is sending it to her Town Council for a final review, and then it moves to Open Space to look at the final version, and to us, and then to Select Board, because I think the Select Board has to approve the contract. So we're moving forward step by step. It's just a more longer-term process than I thought, but it is moving forward. She's worked with us before when she was part of the Dana Truslow project. We've met with her 2 or 3 times. She's willing to come and do a presentation to the commission and to the Open Space Committee and work with us and answer more questions. So it's moving along. That's where it is right now. But I'm happy to take any questions about the conservation process. There's so many resources available to review, to talk to people. When the consultant is on board, she's willing to sit down and have a candid, confidential conversation to answer questions. It will remain in private until that owner is ready to go forward, if they're ready to go forward. So those initial conversations are private. Any questions? Okay. Just a quick note, I think the next on the agenda is the Recreation Trails Walk on September 24. Deb Briscoe, Andy Gray, Andy LaRoche, Bruce Stevens, Becky Dunham. We went on a 2-hour walk on all on the recreation trails over the recreation property. Deb led us through. We went through the archery course and saw all of that. We also went back to where the property opens up onto Middle Road on the other side of 125 or Route 107. It was about a 2-hour plus walk. Questions were asked. The trails seem to be in pretty good condition. There are some concerns Deb has about a culvert that sometimes gets clogged in the area that drains towards Middle Road or drains towards the other exit. So I've asked Deb to come back, if she's willing, next month to at least review the notes and summarize what we discovered on that walk. Any information that would be helpful in maintaining the trails, or we can offer advice or be helpful to her. We did not get through over to the right of way through the power lines. People had deadlines and it was already a pretty hot afternoon, so that might be the next walk before November. What she did point out, there are some invasives on the trails. The bittersweet is invading some areas, and there's some limb trimming that needs to be done to keep the trails open and clear, but those are the 2 things that came up immediately, and the culvert. Okay. Any questions about rec trails? Okay. Stevensfield, we've been busy walking. On September 20, Rob Wolfchuck, Rebecca Dunham, Andy LaRoche, Deb Briscoe, Matt Tarr from UNH, and Bruce Stevens walked the Stevensfield easement that's behind the Split Rock Trails and Conservation. You can access it off of Old Hague Road, or if you went through Split Rocks and crossed the bridge, you'd come to that property. It's the former hayfield that the Stevens family placed in an easement. Matt Tarr identified certain concerns about the encroachment of shrubbery and trees from all the borders. The issue of, again, invasives, bittersweet growing along the perimeter, as well as on certain spots in the fields. There are also invasives like shrubs and wild rose and Russian olive in the fields that need to be trimmed down. So we've talked right now, what we've been doing with Stevensfield in the last couple of months is that Bob Magnuson, a volunteer, has been mowing the trail. So at least people who are doing the walks aren't coming home tick infested or scratched. They at least have the trails to walk. He will mow the upper field or the south field, north field, which is the big hay field once you cross over the stone wall in October. He's done the trails over there, but he will do the entire field. We walked that last Friday. I walked that last Friday with Bob. He's mowing as close as he can to the perimeter of that field, but there are a couple of trees down, there are limbs down, overhanging limbs that prevent him from mowing closer to the perimeter. And that's something we need to do as more encroachment is happening. We need to clear up some of that dead wood. So I think for this year, we're going to get that field mowed, but Rob has a thought. He contacted Mr. Breen. Would you like to talk about that? My voice is going.
Yeah,
I need
sure.
to get some water.
Yep. Realizing it looked like we had, and I know Becky's gonna go into the budget later, but it looked like there was quite a bit of unspent money. I had met a guy that lives just a couple houses down from here, Kevin Breen, who has, Green Landworks, who does, I guess, hardscapes and has equipment to do this sort of work that we're talking about. We had thought about grants, a New Hampshire Fish and Game grant, which is why Matt Tarr was there. He's kind of one of the gatekeepers, but that money's already been spent for this fiscal year, so it wouldn't be available to the second half of next year. And in walking with Bruce, who's donated the property to the town with an easement, it's clear that the town hasn't kept it in the shape that the Stevens family had it or that they would desire it. So what I had met Kevin Breen from Breen Landscapes, something like that, at a UNH extension committee several months ago, so I don't really know him. But he had mentioned that he'd worked with people in town, including on Bruce's property. And he went out and took a walk, and he looked at just doing the southern field, cutting back all the branches, cutting up all the logs that are preventing the mowing. It was pointed out, like Becky said, there's a lot of larger woody debris in the middle of the fields that Bob's mower can't handle. So for a very rough quote of under 5,000, which if the group decides to go forward, Becky would like to meet with and get it more finalized, but he would do the entire south field. So brushing everything back to the walls, cutting the overhead limbs, doing the whole mowing of the fields, all the woody debris, cutting back the branches. So bringing it much closer to the way the Stevens family used to maintain their field. So we could talk about it during the budget, but I would, my thought was to use the unspent money from the budget to get started on this project, spread it out over a couple years, and next year, if there's room in the grant for Fish and Game, maybe we can get part of it covered next year. But at least we would get started, and once, if he was to do all this, then Bob would be able to mow the entire field
Yeah.
going forward.
Alternate years,
And
yeah.
we would hopefully be able to maintain some of those edges a little better once we get them back to where they should be. And so part of it is it just got overgrown when the other landowner who had their cows there was doing it because the town never really got involved, but it just never was maintained as properly as it should have been.
And the invasives are really a concern. You can see how they're pulling down the trees, and they are taking over certain central parts of some of the fields, and they will just create a mat of invasives which will kill all the other vegetation, and it will just become, you'll lose the use of the land. So maintaining is important. And we had sent a letter to the Woodman family that was pasturing their cows on the property, asking them to remove the fence by September 30. There was no response from them, so I spoke to Karen Clement, and she said we can also move forward with removing the fence. She gave that approval so that we can begin to do that work. Some of it's embedded in the woods where trees have grown up around it, so there's work to do right on the edge in the woods too. So
So I don't know if now's the time. My thought was to make a motion to empower the chair
to meet with,
Kevin or whoever
Mhm.
you thought was appropriate to use unspent funds from this year's budget towards starting to rehabilitate the fields. But I don't know if you want to do that as now, or you want to wait to talk about the budget and see what money's there, how you want to do that.
that's a big question, what money's going to be left. But I think the motion is fine, and if we don't have money left, then we'll just tack it on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to empower the chair to meet with Kevin Breen or other contractors to remediate the fields in terms of brushing back to the walls, cutting overhanging limbs.
Do the necessary.
Yes,
Yes,
that. With the unspent funds from this year's budget.
Is there a second?
Well, are we approving you meeting with people, or are we approving the expenditure?
Right.
Meet-
Sorry.
Question.
Meeting and expended.
Meeting and expended,
And, sorry, yes, thank you.
if there's money left over in this year's budget.
I don't think we need to approve any meeting that you wanted to have with somebody, but I'd like to know what the expenditure is before I vote on that.
True.
Well, up to 5,000 or less.
But then don't,
But-
we need to see
We
what's
need to see it
remaining
first.
and see what the scope of the service is.
Yeah.
I'd feel more comfortable with that.
I think, and don't get me wrong, I think this is good, right?
Yeah.
It's progress and it needs to
Yep.
happen. It's just procedural for
Well,
me.
we just talked about that
Yeah.
today. It's a recent thing. A lot of things came up recently
Yeah.
for this meeting. I am happy to meet with Kevin and come back to the Conservation Board with a proposal.
Okay, yeah, I guess the only thing is he's willing and we would like it done before the winter if possible to get started. So, I mean, maybe and we're not gonna know the exact amount.
No, no.
But,
We're
Let-
talking 5,000.
uh,
We're talking 5,000.
yes, and it would be based on whatever the unspent funds are, which we have a
Right.
projection.
Yeah.
A pretty good projection.
It actually might be better to wait till the brink of winter because the leaves are going to be gone. You're going to be able to see things much more clearly, what's on the ground and what needs to be done. It'll be bare earth. I can come back
Yeah.
November 13 at the next meeting with his feedback.
Okay.
Is
I
that
mean, I
with
don't
the
know what's gonna
proposal?
change between now and October 13th,
Yep.
November 13th. That's the only thing. If you can get started and it's dry, that's the only thing. Just to try and keep things going. Otherwise, we're into next year again.
Yep.
It's gonna be too wet and,
Does anyone know, can we hire somebody without competitive proposal process? Can we just,
If it's under 10,000,
It's
we
under
can do that,
10,000,
yes. Bruce?
thank you, Bruce. Anybody else? Just raise your hand, don't be shy.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
so, all right, and is there,
Well, that-
Well, we'll get into what's going to be spent on this budget over the next 2 months
well,
in the budget discussion.
I'll amend it then. I don't
Amend
think
it.
we need to approve your discussions with them, but if we want to spend the money, we
Yeah.
can limit it by 2 factors. One is $5,000, or whatever we have left over in the budget.
Yeah,
And I'm willing
my
to-
motion.
That's in it
Okay.
already?
Was it
Okay,
at the
yeah.
end to spend up to the amount of the unspent funds?
We should at least, I'd like to at least know what it is though, right?
Something under 5,000.
No,
You
I
mean the
understand.
details of what he'll do, sort of like a scope of work?
Well, I think I have an understanding of that. No, what we're talking about in terms of remaining,
Okay.
monies for the projections.
I'll make a motion to table my motion until budget discussion.
Okay, okay,
Do I just withdraw it?
Just withdraw it.
just withdraw.
Okay.
Okay,
You second.
Becky's the only one who.
I second it.
Sorry.
I withdraw my second.
Sorry, I had the wrong term. That's what I was trying to say before. Now
Okay.
it's clear.
okay. Well, I agree with the discussion so far that work needs to be done to remediate how the the property has changed over 38 years, and what we can do to protect it for open space and wildlife, and to prevent the invasives which will destroy natural habitat. So I think that's important.
So what is the plan?
I'm going to meet with Breen, come back to you with, we're going to talk about this in budget, but I'm going to agree to meet with Breen and just find out more details so that we have a clear picture.
Did he walk the property with you? So he knows exactly what he.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a more detailed email describing exactly what he would like to do, but I think it's good for
Yeah,
Becky to
have to
meet
meet
with him
him,
in
yeah.
person. And he has a rough estimate of what it would cost and how many hours.
In the email?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I
that just
wanted to
takes
see
us
what-
into November,
what-
though,
What's left?
in the
What-
winter.
Yep.
In the budget?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we're gonna.
Oh, do
We're
we
going to
know?
get into budget.
We don't do.
All right, so, I'm sorry, Matt.
He's withdrawing it, so we'll go over this in the budget discussion.
Later in the meeting today.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes,
Got it.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Fuller easement update. I talked, Dwayne Hyde and Ben Engel both said to me that Ben is meeting with the Fuller family, all the children, and Mrs. Fuller within this next 2 weeks. They've scheduled a meeting to review the entire easement document, all the details to make sure everyone is on board. There are no concerns from the children or last-minute concerns from Fuller. So that's going forward, and we'll have a report back. Next, let's see. Let me just find, okay. 371 South Road, I mentioned that last month, that a complaint was filed. First, an email was sent to the planning board, the select board, and to me, concerned about a neighbor that was doing damage to wetlands. Had a conversation with this gentleman, who's the neighbor across the street, and he said that he was going to file a complaint with DES, which he did on 9/11, concerned that the wetlands were being destroyed. The land had been wet in the spring and most of the year. Received a copy of the complaint form right here. After it was received by DES, I received a copy of a letter that was sent to the alleged perpetrator, saying that they were well, how else do you phrase that? DES was adding this case to their inspection list. That was on the 20th, they have 20 days to do that. I have not heard back. In the meantime, the gentleman who's been doing the work sent a letter to DES with a copy to us denying that he had done anything wrong. I have not heard back from DES. I think it's still moving forward, but I'm sure we will hear back. We've carbon copied on everything. It's on South Road. It's what used to be the Shuffleton property. There's a pond and lots of wetlands there. I don't know if the select board has received that. And Skip Kaiser went out and just reviewed. He didn't do an official report, but he sent those notes. I'm happy to make copies of that for anyone who wants to look at it in more depth, but it's in DES's hands right now. Department of Environmental Services. 371 South Road.
It's west of 125.
Yeah, west of 125. And there is a pond right up close to the road and other wetlands, and there's been clearing and land moving.
Same, it's the old Shuffleton.
Yes, yes. So if there are any questions about that, just wanted to keep you up to date. Okay. While Paul's reading that, I'll move on to the conference on November 2. Michelle, Patrick, and I are going. In your packet is a copy of the workshops that are offered. There's still room if anyone else wants to attend. Should be in your packet. Should be a copy of this. If you're interested, please let me know. We've paid the registration as of today. So if you're interested in any of those workshops, please consider that. thought I put a copy in each packet. Anyway. Okay, Jim Hazard's moved up, okay. I will skip Jim because we had Jim's presentation. I'm just going to ask the question of Lisa, are any monitoring of properties scheduled or will be before the end of the year?
But soon, very, very soon.
Okay.
I have a whole spreadsheet that I'm gonna start calling people.
More volunteers are always welcome, but thank you for those who stepped up. Lisa has a good collection of people. Okay, a couple more things before we get to the budget. As you all probably know, the Planning Board, the Town of Brentwood applied for a housing opportunity grant of $40,000 last year. On September 30, they submitted their final report on the use of the grant and subsequently applied for HOP 2.0 to follow up on the progress that has been accomplished with the first grant. The application, there is a copy of the application, I believe, on the town website. It's public information now. It was sent out September 30. There are all kinds of statistics, information from the survey and what was accomplished with the first grant and the steps that they would like to take to move this forward to increase housing options and opportunities in town. Conservation is mentioned in the calendar. This work is all scheduled, if the grant comes through, to begin January of 25. And conservation is listed as project partners under 3 of the points or 4 of the points in their tasks. So as this moves forward, I don't remember when the decision is made by the Housing Opportunity Program, but you're welcome to peruse this 30-page document. And if you have any questions, we'll keep this in front of you to talk about, but I wanted you to be aware of this since we're named in the grant.
And then, again, who's the decision maker, the housing?
Well, the Housing Opportunity Program, the state of New Hampshire,
Got it.
grants the money. Towns apply for it in phase 1 or phase 2 with specific
That's
criteria.
all I needed.
Okay.
Right.
Also, the master plan, there are 3 chapters that I received copies of from the planning board. These 3 chapters, they're going to present to the select board their work. The vision chapter, the Brentwood transportation chapter, and the Brentwood housing chapter. All those are going to be available, and they're being presented to the select board, I guess, at the next meeting, within the next meeting. So I did not read these yet, just received them, but please take a look at them, see if there are any questions, or attend the meetings, attend the planning board meetings. Okay. Budget. In your packet, for your enjoyment, is a draft, and I've labeled it as a draft, of the proposed budget that I have put out in front of you. You can see the budget that we have for the current fiscal year, what we've expended at least as of September 18, and what I'm proposing. In this process, as it's unfolded over the last few weeks, is I met with Karen Clement. We've talked before as a commission that our budget line items didn't reflect all the work that we do. There were some limitations, lines that didn't identify particular uses that we have done or we will be doing. So 3 lines were added to the budget, 3 line items. Professional services, which would accommodate consultant fees, any other contracts that we have. Second one was travel and mileage, sending people off to conferences or to go to Concord for a program or to meet with individuals. And the last one is land maintenance, where we could do work on any of the easement properties. That might be Stevensfield. That might be repairing a kiosk that's damaged. That might be putting a culvert in that was washed away on the Stevensfield, or doing any trimming. I've put a modest amount in there. So those 3 line items have been added. I've listed what the purposes of those line items are according to the manual that Karen Clement has, and I've identified on my notes where I think we will be as of December 31. Without the consultant, I believe we will have expended approximately $3,900 out of our $12,000 budget. What I've asked for, proposed in my draft, is a budget of $16,103, which is an increase of $3,400 or 26%. I've done a preliminary conversation with the select board just to give an overview of some of the line items we're concerned about and some of the expenses. And we are due back on October 31 to do the official presentation before the select board and then the budget. I think it's the select board, then the budget committee. I believe so. I have a detailed sheet as to what I think the expenses might be over the next 2.5 months. And that leads us to an option that we have to talk about. It includes a couple of things, if I can just describe that to you. While this was going on, I received an invoice through Karen from Divine Millimet, the bond counsel in Concord that did all the legal work pertaining to asking for the $250,000 for the Fuller, doing all the details to get that to happen. Their invoice comes to $7,250. I was not anticipating that. It's not written into the bond language that we can use the bond itself for legal fees. So this is either coming out of our budget this year or a conservation fund. I'll make a couple of points here. There are two options. It was a surprise. It is $7,250, which is just a little bit more than what a consultant contract would be. Option one, we could take it out of the 224 budget out of audit expenses, which is $7,000, which covers most of it. That's one suggestion from Karen Clement. Or we can take it out of the conservation fund, which has the language. The conservation fund may be expended, the conservation fund money on what can spend, the Conservation Commission can spend money from the conservation fund on whatever conservation-related purposes the members agree on. It has to be a majority vote by us. It can be goods or services. It's also used for purchase of easements or paying for easements, but that's the first category, goods and services for conservation. It takes a majority vote for us. Then it would go to the select board just for information. My concern is if we don't have a signed, the other option is that whatever money's left over, if we have a contract signed by the consultant, we could encumber some of that for next year. If there's no contract signing, then we return that money to the town general budget. So the questions are, which is most appropriate? To take it out of the budget and spend down as far as we can and use the conservation fund for the consultant fees, or pay it out of the conservation fund and forgot what the other option is, the contract for the consultant.
What's in the conservation fund?
70, let me just get to my orange card here. $78,047.32. It's capped at, we should have a fund of $75,000, but there's a little leftover money from a grant that's just been held in escrow. That's $1,500. And there's some interest earned on this $75,000 conservation fund. So anything that's taken out of the conservation fund would have to be replenished next year by the town up to the $75,000. We're always supposed to keep that at $75,000. $78,047.32, and that was as of December 31.
And so, I'm sorry, the 7250
Is the
was for,
from the bond counsel for doing all the legal work related to taking $250,000 out of the conservation bond to pay for the Fuller easement,
for the Fuller easement.
the Fuller conservation
So that
easement.
legal fees, basically.
Legal fees, yes.
So I guess I'm confused. Why wasn't that part of the proposal that had been
I don't
presented
know.
to us?
The proposal that was presented to you
Presented
was
as the select
from
board.
CEL, yes, the select board. I don't know, Paul. Here's the description and the invoice. I received that, I think, September 16. It was a surprise to me. This is the first time we've used this bond, so I don't know if anyone was aware that that It can't come out of the bond. It's not in the bond language. I called Barbara at the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, and she said, unless it says in the bond language, the warrant language, that you can use legal fees, you cannot use the bond for legal fees for the easements.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how this got lost in the presentation that was
I
made
don't
to
know.
us that we voted upon.
I don't know.
That's,
So were we at all aware this was coming? What,
Yeah, I think
It's-
I was aware. I mean, it's very common on all the bond issuances. You need bond counsel to provide the legal opinion and help with all the paperwork to file with New Hampshire State. I thought it was always wrapped into the bonds, but looking
couldn't- yeah,
back
you
today, it looks like they have been taken out of the conservation
Yep.
fund in the past.
Yeah. As were surveys and appraisals and other expenses related to
Sometimes,
that.
but-
Sometimes.
I mean, I thought that the bond was the language allowed for expenses related to conservation expenses. Because sometimes it looks like from the past, expenses have been included. So I'm not sure if we have a legal opinion or just your opinion as to whether or not the current bond language, but if not, maybe we should amend it if it needs, because I think it would be the intention that all expenses associated with an easement would be bonded over the 15 or 20 years. Why pay, this is only 7, but if we were to do an easement as a town, it could be 50,000.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it could be hundreds of thousands of extra dollars in expenses on top of the 3 million we approved, which doesn't seem like it falls in line with the intention.
so
I thought originally that it could be wrapped into the bond. Maybe we asked for the wrong amount, but
who retained this firm to do this work?
It was approved by the select board. No?
I'm not aware of that,
Not aware of that?
frankly. That's why I'm saying it.
I mean, somebody called,
I can't hire
Yeah.
anybody.
No,
We
I
can't.
know.
somebody called this law firm and asked them to do this work.
yeah.
Do we know who that was? Was that Self?
I think it was the
No,
administrator.
no. This is the town.
This will be the
This is
town.
all just the town, because,
This is regarding the Fuller easement, right?
but the town is taking out the 250,000 from the bond issuance.
Right.
So just like we were to bond the firehouse or anything else, the town hires.
So somebody in town hired this firm to do this work.
Yeah.
And so,
I believe I heard a conversation at select board meeting that Karen the administrator was going to go to bond counsel, to hire bond counsel.
okay.
I
If
thought I
that's-
heard that.
If that's correct, then
But
it shouldn't have been a surprise. Maybe it's a surprise that it comes out of our budget. Is that the surprise?
I think that is that's part of the surprise.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the surprise.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they sent it to Karen, so she must have retained them in the first place.
Right.
But it's the surprise as it comes out of our budget. Okay.
So I'm looking at 8,800 that's remaining in this year's budget. Is that, because you said there was 3,900?
Yeah, about 80,
Spent?
yeah. Will be spent by the end of December, yes.
Okay. And out of a 12/7
Yeah.
budget, so
Yeah.
that leaves like 8,800.
Yeah.
And then there's 78, what'd you say, $78,000?
78,000 and $37, $47.
So I'm wondering if like you could use maybe 3,000 from that fund and then take.
So spend down to the $75,000 ceiling
Then,
from the conservation fund and the rest out of the commission's budget.
well, because, there was that conversation that Rob wanted to have about, which made
Yep.
sense with regard to,
Yep.
getting someone. So if you took 4,500 out of what's remaining in the budget, that would bring it down to like 4,300.
Okay,
That would give you a little room to maybe, do some of that maintenance that we were talking about, because I'd like to get Bruce's $1,000 donation.
yeah.
Yeah, understood.
So let me recap this.
So before you do, Becky,
Yep.
if I could, I wrote the warrant article and I'm trying,
Yeah.
my recollection is that there was wording in there for expenses related to the procurement of land. So, if anyone has a copy of it, I'd love to read it.
Ask you, Showers.
Should I read it?
Sure.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3 million for purchasing land or other interests therein for conservation. $3 million of such sum to be raised through bonds or notes in compliance with the Federal Finance Act, RSA, blah, blah. To authorize the select board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and the other terms thereof, and to take any other action they deem appropriate to effectuate the sale and/or issuance of said bonds or notes, subject, however, to the following provisions. No such bonds shall be issued with a term of maturity less than 15 years. Such bond authority shall expire at conclusion of fiscal year 2027. Purpose of warrant articles: conserve parcels. Where applicable, such land will be made available. Land or property interests to be purchased with bond proceeds shall be acquired in the name of the town by the Conservation Commission, subject to the approval of the Select Board pursuant to RSA 36A4. So I guess it's to authorize the Select Board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and maturity and the other terms thereof, and to take any other action. Seems to me the Select Board, that gives the Select Board permission. I mean, if I was gonna interpret this, that gives the Select Board permission to use the money and request whatever it is, $257,000.
When I spoke to Barbara in HACC, she said unless it specifically says the bond can be used for legal expenses, that,
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, but
Yeah.
no offense to anybody.
Deliverance of the bond required accessing the money of the bond, and therefore that would fall under.
so,
I think we should get an interpretation from legal counsel maybe, or,
well, the bond, the funds are here. The $250,000 is in our account, waiting for the Fuller
Yeah.
to complete. That piece is done.
yeah, so maybe move for this one.
It's moot for this one.
Okay.
Well, can we just use legal fees from the town? Does it have to come out of the conservation budget? It's a bill to the town. It's not a bill to, no, seriously. And they've only,
We'd have to
and they've
discuss
only,
that
they
at
have
select
33%.
board level.
They have 33% of the legal budget left, is last I saw, so, is that an option?
Put it on the agenda.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like it could all work out, though. I mean, I like Paul's idea. If we take 3,000 out of the conservation fund and we have 8,800, that's 11,800 minus the 7,250 leaves 3,650 maybe.
I was thinking more. So at
4,000? I
three,
don't know
so
if I-
if you go 3 and you bring it down to
Oh yeah,
75,
1,600. So 4,600, which would
4,500.
That's almost 5,000 to you and me.
and it's
Yeah.
greater than the number I think we need.
Thank you.
So that seems like we could do it all. I'll spend the money in our budget. Not really need to ask for more money in the conservation fund because of the interest and whatnot, and everyone walks away happy. Get the field done, we paid expenses, we learned our lesson, and
And then if the contract comes through, is signed, that would be taken out of the conservation fund,
If she does any work,
if she does any work, yes.
which seems
And it's not
somewhat
tied into
unlikely,
it's not
like we
tied into a
discussed.
calendar year or a budget year.
Right. We're already in
Yep.
October, she doesn't come
Yep.
out till November, we don't
Yep.
have any super hot prospects.
Yep. So, to recap, since the bond money is already here and that process is complete, it's moot for this particular bond. But to ask for legal counsel to review the language to see if any future easements, the bond expenses, the bond counsel expenses could come out of the bond.
And other,
Or, well,
this is,
this is the town, so,
but other expenses like
yeah,
if we need an environmental survey. things
okay,
like
so
that.
we need,
Expenses associated with bond
Getting the bond.
procurement,
Yeah.
right?
yep,
Or just the easement itself.
yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, first ask, this is moot, so.
Yeah,
But to get
that's
the
a
question
forward-looking
answered.
question.
That's a
Right.
forward-looking question. So for now, to make the decision about this, to put it on the select board agenda, can the town budget, the town legal budget pay this?
I'd like to make a motion, we pay it out of
Yeah.
our budget,
Is,
because we have the funds. It's all
I'll second.
Same.
okay,
It's all
okay, so
You wanna
legal out of
Specify though, like
Out of our
2024.
budget or out of the conservation fund?
conservation fund,
3,000 out of conservation fund.
$3,047.32 out of the conservation
Just-
fund.
Hang on.
Actually,
Or just say 3,000 and then 4,500 out of.
wait, before we, so it's my understanding that if we're taking money out of the conservation fund to deal with land acquisition, it requires a public hearing. If we're doing it for goods and services or other landscaping maintenance, it does not.
This is
I've
a
got the
service,
language.
It has to do with, the expenses have to do with purchase of the real property.
It's the services attached to the.
Legal
purchase.
services.
It's legal services. It's service.
Associated with the purchase of the property, real property.
It says any legal services. I've got the language here. Got the language here somewhere. Let's see.
I'm agreeing with the end result, I'm just saying, why not pay, if the legal services are paid out of our budget, then I think it eliminates the need for a public hearing. We take the 3,000 out for the field restoration.
Patrick, you've been raising your hand.
Respectfully, I would prefer we defer this to the select board. If it's a contract they entered into and voted on, then it should go to them to then fund. I would personally rather see the conservation budget if we have that option entirely spent on the restoration. If that means we need $10,000 to cut that field, so be it. I think the town has the budget as Sue said to cover this expense, and it was the select board's oversight on this matter. Leaves it to us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Patrick. I disagree with that.
Yeah, I think it was our process, our project.
I think you're making stuff up now, like before.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's all the same money coming out of the
Well,
town.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I happen to agree with Patrick, but
Then we won't spend our entire budget.
And we'll give it back to the town anyway.
You might as well use the budget. So if you have, I don't know, you could look at that language.
Respectfully, we would be saving $3,000, right? We wouldn't take money from the conservation fund. We would have this bill paid by the town, and then we would be able to appropriate the funds we need to pay for the field cleanup, and we wouldn't necessarily be worried about our budget.
But there are funds available. That's the point. There are funds
And-
There's not enough funds.
What happens if we don't spend our full budget this year? It goes back to the
It
town.
goes back to the
Right.
general fund.
Then the whole point's moot then, but it's not moot now.
I want to be,
We're worried about this hypothetical if we get a contract, if we need to pay for Bruce Stevens Field. We could not have to worry about either of those hypotheticals if the town picked up the thing, which they have the money to do anyway, even though we're all part of the same town.
Letty,
If you are in a situation at the end of the year where you would like to spend an amount of money that would put your budget, your personal conservation budget, in the negative, then you can come in front of the select board and ask if that's okay. There's no, because as people have said, it's all the same money. As long as the bottom line of the budget stays positive, we are allowed to overspend in different lines. I don't know if that helps this discussion or not.
Are we even,
like-
but are we even talking about going negative?
No.
No,
No,
I didn't think so.
no, we're not.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's the
I didn't
point.
think so.
Could I just, can I just quickly point out that I don't think anyone here is trying to avert a public meeting or the public process,
Yeah.
except that we have a fairly short fuse here. And that's the only reason we don't, we probably would want to forego a public discussion of this. Otherwise, if we had plenty of time, it probably wouldn't be an issue. But I don't think we want to routinely avoid, you know, a public hearing on these matters, or shift money from one pot to another in order to avoid a public hearing. I don't think that's what Rob meant.
No.
I think he was trying to usher the issue along in
Yeah.
an expeditious fashion so that we can get this done and Bruce can spend his $1,000, which appears to be burning a hole in his pocket.
Wait a minute, I still haven't heard an answer to whether a public hearing is required.
In certain cases, it is.
What are those cases?
Okay, so from my recollection.
We don't
anything
know
to
for sure.
do- Correct.
Okay.
But I do know for sure that mowing the fields does not.
Correct, okay.
So all I'm suggesting is Paul has a right. We don't need to take any extra, we can take the 3,000 extra in the conservation fund. We won't require any replenishment. We could take the extra in our current budget, which would pay for the entire legal bill and the fields. Done. Not
But the
negative.
only question is, does the payment of the legal bill require a public hearing?
No,
No.
no.
Then why are we even talking about a public hearing and moving money
Because he
around?
was
I was
suggesting.
suggesting taking 3,000 of the legal fee from the,
I'm just
from the
changing the
fund.
purposes.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
suppose.
Which would require a public hearing?
No.
I
No,
don't know.
here it is. Here it is.
I don't know.
Expenditure types, spending money from the conservation. General expenditures to pay for conservation-related goods or services requires only a majority vote by Conservation Commission, RSA 36A5. Purchase property interest within municipal boundaries requires approval of selectmen or other governing body. Conservation Commission must hold a public hearing with notice in accordance with RSA 675.7.
So that's not-
Purchasing property interest within municipal boundaries requires a majority vote. Town must have passed a warrant, requires approval of selectmen. Conservation Commission must hold a public hearing, and requires a majority vote again by the commission. So the more, the distance you get from goods and services, the more complicated it is with
All right.
public
So if
I'm
we
hearings.
just pay for the
suggesting
mowing
is
outside
Mowing is
the
in
comp-
category 1.
Well, so-
Legal is in category 2.
Two.
So if we just do exactly what Paul's saying, but the reason for the withdrawal of the 3,000, not to avoid anything, just
Why isn't legal in category 1, goods and services?
It isn't, it's-
directly related to the purchase of real property.
But it's not purchasing real property.
No,
I'm not an attorney. In the past, anything that would be on that budget sheet
Yeah.
for the easement would be category 2.
But if it was on that budget sheet, it would have been approved already.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have, Rob.
It wouldn't.
That budget sheet,
I'm happy, there's a motion on the table, I think seconded, to pay the legal expense out of the budget
Which we can do without a public hearing.
without
Yes.
just voting right now.
yes.
Okay.
So that would leave then $1,300, as I understand it, in the budget.
Approximately, yes.
And then there would be another 3,000
Another vote to take out.
that could be used from the conservation fund, so there would be like $4,300 plus Bruce's $1,000.
If
Cover it.
necessary.
If
we might not
necessary.
do it.
So, and that only requires,
that's the first,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So all it requires to take money out of the conservation fund is a majority vote by this board for goods and services.
We vote on the first first motion?
Well,
Let's
let's
summarize it.
paper the first motion first. So what is, so I get it
I
written
make a
accurately.
motion to pay the invoice
The legal fee,
for
the legal
bond
invoice.
counsel in the out of the budget, current 2024 budget.
$72.50 is the amount.
7250 or 75?
7,250.
Okay.
72.50.
Yeah. I
I
was
think
thinking,
Bob did earlier.
yeah, I did, but I didn't know what the motion was then.
Yeah.
Okay,
You've changed it, right?
So you're paying, the motion
the
is to
same?
pay $7,250 out of the current year budget
correct.
in legal fees. And do we have that in the current year budget?
Yes.
We do,
And more.
And
we
more.
do,
Okay,
we do.
all right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Any more discussion? All in favor?
aye.
I'll make a motion to.
Hang on. Motion 2, go ahead.
I will make a motion to withdraw $3,000 from the conservation fund for the restoration of the town property that we call the Stevens Fields, donated by the Stevens. Split Rock Fields.
Do you have that down, Matt?
Split rock field, is that what we call it?
I mean, it's part of the
It's-
Split Rock Conservation.
Under 5.
Under 5. All of this would add up to be enough, because we have 1,600 left in our budget.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you're,
Well, wait,
And
I
then
just
another
start
3
1,000
on top
of
of that.
yours,
Yeah,
1,600
yeah,
of ours.
yeah.
And maybe it should be up to 3,000, we might not need the entire amount.
I would go as high as 45. I mean,
Yes.
and then,
yeah.
well, I mean, we'll,
Well, 4,000, 'cause it's gonna be under 5.
what's our surplus in the conservation fund?
$3,047.
2047?
3,000,
3047,
yes.
okay. And so why would you want to withdraw more than 3 from that?
not more, and then another and then give,
14,
and
yeah.
then give Becky
I got it. The
authority
three
up to
yeah.
That's gonna be
4,000.
the third motion.
Right,
Oh, that's the
that'll
third
be
one.
the third motion. So
Okay.
right now, we're just talking about 3,000 from the
Conservation.
Conservation Fund for the purposes of restoring the
Under-
Stevens Field
Second.
and the Split Rock Conservation
There's a
Area.
second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll make a motion to, are you ready?
He's
Yeah, I'm ready.
as Fast as he
To
can.
empower the chair to hire a consultant for up to $5,000 towards the restoration.
We're gonna call this person a consultant.
No, no.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, our contractor.
Contractor.
Right.
Sorry, contractor.
To hire a contractor for Stevens Field restoration up to a maximum of $5,000.
Second.
Any discussion? More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to put on the record the gracious donation of Bruce Stevens of $1,000 to be spent first before the end of the year, conditioned on it being spent before the end. That's not a motion, that's
It's an acknowledgement.
It's an acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement, yes.
And we can accept those donations free and clear. Okay,
Yeah, do it
Okay.
that way.
That's
That's
even
simpler.
better.
That's
Yeah,
simpler.
tax deduction
Yeah,
from the town.
yeah.
It's your advisor, but
I do think that has to go through a process though, doesn't it? Doesn't the town have to
I don't know.
have a
that.
thing to accept it?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah,
No,
don't-
seriously,
don't
I
know
think
that.
they do.
He's gonna pay the contractor.
I thought this, so. I think it's, yeah, it was with the amphitheater. Someone made a donation. The select board had to accept that. it was a big one. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So are we done with the legal payment?
We're done with the payment of
Do
legal
you want to
fees.
talk about next year's budget?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So as I said, we are appearing before the select board on the, I'm appearing before the select board on the 21st, and you see the figures I have plugged in here. You know the additional line items that were added to this budget. I did ask Karen if we should have a line for legal fees, and she said you don't need it, and I spoke to a couple of other conservation commissions, and they do not have a line for legal fees. So I accepted that.
Unless you get.
Then it goes back to the town should pay that legal bill.
Right.
But
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're taking things out of their conservation funds. So you can see the figures I've plugged in there requesting for next budget year. Professionals training remains the same, audit expense remains the same, easement monitoring remains the same. The $9,500 is for consultant and other contracts. It covers anything, software I would buy for something, or equipment, no, professional services, consultant, anything else. Advertising notice remains the same, dues remains the same. I've put in $50 for postage because we've already spent $43 this year and probably will spend a little bit more on some information packets. Office supplies, that's going to be expended in full by the end of the year, so I'm asking for just a little bit more. Travel and mileage, I thought that would cover a couple trips to Concord back and forth and up to Pembroke, so I've got 200 in there. Town events remains the same. Land maintenance is new, and that is for little fixes or projects on any of the conservation properties or details. And then a $1 for annual appropriation. Coming to, I said, 16,103, overall increase of just $3,400 or 26%. If you want to know what we spent in previous years on budgets, the last 3 years, I've got those figures here. In 2020, we only spent $560. That was a COVID year. In 21, we spent $2,737, leaving 79% of our budget. 22, we spent $560, leaving 95% of our budget. 23, we spent $700, leaving 94%. So we are much more active, but I wanted to have a trend and analysis of what we have spent in the past. So with all that we're doing, there is a rationale for increasing our budget moderately to do the projects that we have in front of us.
I'd also like to point out that this number is still less than it was
Yes,
before COVID.
it
And-
was 19,674 in
And
2020.
it seems as if, with the land conservation and managing the warrant, that we're doing a lot.
Yep.
Maybe even more than we were then, so.
Yeah.
Are you aware of us ever spending near that amount of money on monitoring, and why is it so high? Or is
That's
that,
before
is
my
that,
time.
is that an in case of?
No, so the monitoring was roughly about those levels. I
Yeah.
mean, Bob, you're right, the total amount was higher, but as I shared with Becky, all of those years had a reimbursement to the conservation fund for things like the big Split Rock Bridge we put in. But my question, Becky, which I said before, is our contract for Ann is only like $6,500 or something, right?
6490 with the provision that should unexpected projects or expenses come up, it could go to 95, which is below the floor of the 10,000 for
Right.
a proposal.
I mean, the one thing I'm hesitant to raise the budget at all, which we discussed a little, because if the consultant fees went higher, we could easily use the conservation fund. We don't have any plans for easement monitoring that I know of for next year. So it seems like we have that 75,000 as a backstop all the time, but if we increase the budget, we take the money out of taxpayers' pockets, whether we use it or not. So this is like a hypothetical if we go above, but yet we have the conservation fund exactly for that reason.
Other things may come along, Rob, whether it's another project to maintain a field or to put in a culvert or a bridge.
Yep, those can all come from the conservation fund.
They could.
That's why
But
we
the-
have-
They could.
The conservation fund is replenished, and it's replenished at the expense of the taxpayer.
Taxpayers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my point is if we take it out in the budget, it comes out immediately. Whereas if we take it out of the if, it's all what if, right? If we need the money, then we put it in next year's budget to replenish it. But if we don't need this money, then we're unnecessarily taxing the taxpayers just to return it to the general fund at the end of the year. So my way to think about the budget is for all these things Becky mentioned, we have 75,000 in the conservation fund to backstop us if something unexpected happens, as opposed to having to plan for a hypothetical and take tax dollars today. That's just my approach that I'm using.
Any other approaches?
I agree with him 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather see a lower bottom line, especially since we don't come near utilizing it. And we do have the backup of that other fund if we need it.
And just to clarify for people who might be listening, I think what Rob is saying is that rather than encumber this money now at the expense of the taxpayers,
Yes.
we would actually incur expenses that would be known, and
Yeah.
those would be reimbursed after the
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
So it's spending money on things that are
whole
actually
number.
being purchased.
So I'm going to offer,
Conservation fund allows us to do that.
And I can tell you that every little bit is going to help, given
Okay.
what we've seen as the
Okay.
total budget that has been requested.
proposed, okay. So let me offer a compromise. For that line item under professional services, if it said $7,500, take 2,000 out of that, leave a little cushion for something, another contract or something else, that brings our increase only up to an increase of $1,400 instead of $3,400. And that's pretty much in land maintenance, travel, and a little in professional fees. So that's only an increase of, what, $1,400 is probably less than 10%.
Can we reduce the easement monitoring?
I don't know. We can?
I mean, I don't think we've spent any great portion of it in several
And
years.
if we needed it, the conservation fund is there to do that also. So maybe just cross off easement monitoring and leave the 9,500 for professional services, which is probably more reflective.
More
of what
flexible,
might
yeah.
happen. And then I think we would be right back on target.
We'll be right back.
So you don't
Or
want
actually a decrease.
you don't want to allocate anything for
No,
easement
it's actually a $100 decrease, I believe. If
Make it
I'm-
9,600.
That would, no, I think that would be a good idea, and we could be like representative for,
Maybe put
you
it
know,
down.
Every other budget.
Exactly.
And I want you on the budget committee.
Okay. So Lisa's come up with a suggestion, instead of removing the entire easement monitoring, 3,500, to leave $100 in there.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
So that reduces it back to just 12,703, if my calculations are correct.
And then what did we do with professional services? You knocked it down?
We're leaving it. at
Leave it.
Leaving it
95.
at 95.
So that is there is an increase, but it's not going to be, I'd have to redo the calculations. Anyone have a calculator?
Everyone has a
Yes.
calculator.
It's on your phone.
You're
Wait a minute, wait a
removing
minute.
3,400, right? I think you're right, it gets right to the same level funded. Yeah.
Maybe I would double check my figures. I would double check my figures, because there are some increases in there.
Right, but that's offset by the,
I'll make a motion to approve a level funded budget for next year,
Hang on.
amounts as.
They're
determined
calculating.
by-
I
They're
can't
calculating.
write when I'm calculating.
So,
I was just making it, just have her do it level.
because
funded.
I don't think it's level funded. I think there's a little bit more in there.
Change a couple numbers.
Well, that's what he's trying to do right now.
Okay.
No, if we change easement monitoring to 100,
right.
And leave everything
leave
else.
professional services, then it's level funded.
It is.
Yes.
I'll be darned. Okay.
moved.
Assuming
Yeah,
these
yeah.
numbers on here are
I second
correct.
Michelle's motion
Like it.
for level
Okay.
funding.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so before, I didn't hear a motion.
Did you actually move?
No, she didn't make a motion. So what,
I'll make a motion that the 2025 budget be level funded, $12,703 with the changes to the line items previously discussed.
What does that mean,
Second.
be leveled funded?
12,703.
Okay.
Same as last
Same
year's
as last
budget.
year.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay.
So it's motion to approve, or approve recommended budget.
Level funded budget
Of 12,703,
Yep.
which reflects level funding with current year.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Thank you for working through this.
Rob, you
You
seconded?
gonna let us go now?
Vote on the motion.
Did you second it?
Yes.
Thank you.
All in, any discussion, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Budget review, okay. Special presentations. Bob, you said you were going to be asking someone to do a presentation in December. You were going to confirm that, and Rob said you would try to find someone for November. But now that Northam is doing that in November, is that going to be?
I haven't secured anything, so if you would like to push it out
To
somewhere
December?
else, then that's, no, he's doing December.
He's doing December, but.
Yeah, I had
forget-
secured somebody for November who apparently wasn't as secured as I thought. I mean, for October. So, yeah, and I'm not, I don't usually, that's Veterans Week in November, so I won't be coming to Concom. I'll be in the woods.
So do you have someone for November or
I
December?
have
December.
someone, potentially have someone for December.
December.
Okay, December.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. No new easement inquiries right now. Capital Improvement Plan 2025 to 2030. I put a copy in showing what is marked down for conservation. I don't know. This goes to the Budget Committee, and I think the Planning Board voted to send this to the Budget Committee and the Select Board. Yes. Yep. Yep. Okay, Bayside, public hearing, other business. Okay, capital improvements, you've got that. There was a complaint, I'll move on to something else. Under other business, a few things came through just in the last day that I could not put on the agenda. The abutter to the Longview Place 13-lot subdivision on Route 125 complained that the abutter thought that there was encroachments on the border to his property. TEC went out there, took photographs, measurements, lines, there's no encroachment. He refuted that there was an encroachment, so it's settled. There's no dispute over this now. So that's at least roadway with fine grading completed and prepping for paving. Abutting property line was reviewed due to abutter concerns. No encroachments were observed. So that's resolved, as far as I'm concerned. A message from Watershed Management Bureau, just for your information, that they've asked that Pawtuckaway Lake release pulsed water into the Lamprey River because there's a critical catastrophic condition with dry weather. So they're going to be taking water out of Pawtuckaway Lake to feed Lamprey River. Now, that was a couple of weeks ago. We've had a little rain, but it still isn't sufficient. Just to let you know that that's a concern. I don't know if there's any concern with the Exeter River, but that only came to me.
I think the Lamprey is one of the few rivers that has like that specific regulation to, in order to keep the critters alive, that they
Yeah.
release water occasionally. The Exeter doesn't have them.
No, and our,
So we don't really have.
you can walk across the river
Bull
behind our
Lake
house.
feeds like the Chico and Isinglass. I
Yeah.
don't know if they're required, although they do releases around this time of year.
For anyone's interested in a workshop, there's a farm ponds and water sources workshop offered twice by Extension UNH. If anyone's interested, climate resilience workshop, farm ponds and water resources. There's one in Kingston on October 23 if you would like to go. I've got the handout here. And Matt Wood from Watershed Management Bureau sent out a notice that they have the announced drafts of the new list of impaired surface water and related documents are available for review on the NDES site. If anyone interested in reading those or responding to them, it's available on the website. I don't know if any engineers here would like to see that. Copy.
And who'd that come from?
Water Management Bureau, Matt
Okay.
Wood. Matt Wood.
Oh, just the company, the entity, Water Management Bureau website.
Yeah. Our co-attending, just looking up last things, HOP grant I did, budget we did, miscellaneous. I think that's it, except for next meeting, November 13. Northam will be here. We'll hear about the rec trails, and do I have a motion? Any other conversation or topics you want to bring up?
Actually, can I just,
Yes.
the addendum that we had discussed, the easement addendum to our policy book.
Yes.
I am wordsmithing it. I actually didn't know if we'd want to have the consultant look at it before we actually put it forth, so I can finish my final touches and send it to you for her. And then the Granite View project that
Yes.
I signed up. No, we've done a great bit of work on it. It's not
Okay.
done, but it's in process.
Well,
So
thank
just
you.
to update
And
you on
that's
that.
with Peter Steckler.
Correct.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you and Patrick and Lise for that, too. So is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, Rob has something.
Yes, I assume it's gonna be December 11th?
Yes, the December meeting
No.
would be December 11th.
December 11th, okay.
Yep.
I've asked him, we'll see what he says.
And I would like to put a thought out there. Last year, we've always done a town cleanup in April. There were some suggestions last year with the short window to implement them. I'd like us to start thinking about how we'd like to improve that event, Patrick, and get you involved in doing that in the spring, how we can promote it and bring other people in to make it a larger event and maybe do more of a celebration. So I'll put that on your table, if that's okay? Thank you. And thank you to Andy for 2 walks, very much. I appreciate that. And thank you to everyone else. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All
That
in
was to
favor?
adjourn, by the way.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye. Who seconded? Paul?
Yes.
You seconded?
Thank you. I did not mean to go this late, but I appreciate all the time. Level funded. Rock on. So room controls, I just off? Exit. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for taking the notes.